It is Segue Magic Saturday and I am actually uploading a video. Crazy! The reason that my face is finally appearing on this channel again is because I have feelings on this topic and they are many in number. I should also say that if you've been with us for a while, you've probably heard me talk about my thesis like a whole bunch and it's really annoying and I'm really sorry, but I'm going to talk about it again in this video. And if that is a thing that you are sick and fucking tired of hearing me talk about, now you have been warned. You've been warned. So back when I was writing my thesis, one of the books that I super loved and leaned on pretty heavily had this fun little chart. It's a page here and up here, these charts in which the author is essentially writing his fandom autobiography. Sidebar number one of several. Fan studies has been a thing for decades now, but it's still filled with this weird self-referential navel-gazy stuff wherein academics have to kind of defend that what they're doing is really like a thing. This book in particular has a really interesting analysis of the disconnect between fans and academics. In fact, it's full of essentially like breakdowns of what are false dichotomies in the way that academics approach and discuss fans and fandom. It's really interesting, but he too falls into that same basic trap of taking the time out for the like, nah, I swear it's legit chapter. Right, so when I first came across this chart, I thought two things. One, that this would be a really freaking cool topic for SnarkSquad posts, and two, that I couldn't actually pitch this as a thing that we would do for SnarkSquad because it would require me to talk about that really shameful time when I liked Twilight. Since most of this very long video is going to be me continuing the discussion that Mari started on Thursday and ignoring the actual prompt, I'm going to really quickly dedicate like a minute or so to answering the prompt. Much like Kirsti, my first foray into like buying merch and sort of engaging with other fans online was also before I actually had a term like fandom to apply to it. Back in the late 90s, I was super into the Spice Girls and I spent a lot of time on Spice Girls websites and message boards, and I had my own Spice Girls website on Angel Fire and it was the coolest. From there, I would say that most of my fandom-y behavior throughout high school was also related to bands of varying quality. At the beginning of my freshman year of high school, I got really into message boards for Good Charlotte and OK Go. About midway through freshman year, the Good Charlotte board shut down, so I started my own sort of general music of that sort message board. And that grew into this website that allowed me to spend my high school years getting free CDs and concert tickets and press passes and stuff. It grew into something a lot bigger than this one shitty band that I liked when I was 14, and I promise I'm bringing this up for a reason, but we'll get back to that later. Wrapping this up, I think that Veronica Mars was the first non-music thing that I was actually engaging with other fans online about. Having dispensed with all of that, I returned to Mari's video and to my thesis, which, if you have not already heard me talk about it 900 times, really quickly, it's about fan identity and community and that sort of thing. Mostly it's about fan identity. So this is like it's a big fucking deal to me. This is why I have so many feelings. So first of all, this isn't actually going to be like a real argument with Mari's video because while that would probably make for better, content, we'll have a thing, but her video was by design very personal in nature, and so nothing that I'm gonna say is about how she chooses to associate or not associate herself with fandom. Like, you do you. That's a big part of what I'm about to say, is like, you do you. The thing is, it is a really arbitrary line. The book that I grabbed before, the preface right there, I don't know if you can see that, it says on the lack of singular definitions. That's the whole preface to this book. It's so responding somewhat in kind to Mari's video, the personal reason that I kind of had the no, I disagree, you're wrong reaction that I did to her video is that we had pretty much the same level of engagement with the Buffy fandom, but for me, personally, I do think that the Buffy fandom counts as like a chapter in my fandom autobiography. You might have picked up on this now because I've used the word a couple times, but for me it is ultimately a question of engagement. Sticking with this very specific Buffy example, a big part of Mari's premise, I guess, is that she comes at the blog from a place of critique and review. For like 1,000 reasons that I've kind of already hinted at elsewhere in this video, it is very important for me personally to make it clear that being a fan and participating in fandom is not in any way mutually exclusive from critical consumption, which is also not a thing that Mari said. I'm not attributing that to anyone else in this conversation. I am merely entering this as a thing into the conversation. With all of this in mind, it is really easy to look back at the stuff that I was doing in high school and draw this line between the stuff that I was doing in the beginning with my fandom engagement and the stuff that I was doing later in high school. There's definitely a line of thinking that would argue that the girl who was hanging out on other people's message boards was a fangirl, while the one who made her own website was getting press passes and shit was something else, as if that later behavior was somehow critically distinct from the former behavior. Probably not surprising, but I hate this line of thinking because it implies something inherently hierarchical, not just different, but qualitatively better. More sidebar fun time! All of the fans that I was looking at in my thesis were YouTubers, and so my own let's spend forever defending terminology section, I had to argue this weird, clunky, frustrating, but I didn't have another way around it, terminology usage that was essentially a way of making sure that in talking about these people as fans and recognizing that somebody else created the thing that they were fans of, I wasn't also undermining them as creators, because that whole space, that space is what my paper was actually about, was that what that is, what that means, and who has that authority and whatever. All of which is to say that I'm getting wildly off topic from this basic ass question of first fandoms, and I've probably just lost the thread completely because I have approximately 962 million feelings about this. So to try to sum this up, my personal drawing of this very, very arbitrary line is that participation in a fandom is some sort of meaningful engagement with material and other people beyond initial consumption. I think that both community and caring about the thing are big pieces of it, which again is why it's really just how you feel. Also, my rebuttal to the notion that our 50 Shades of hate blogging somehow constituted fandom participation is that we failed to meet the most basic criteria, which is like being fans. I think that there are a lot of ways to be a fan, and there are a lot of ways to consume media, and there are also a lot of ways to define this conversation. Clearly, this is just some of my take on it. This is obviously going up way too late for me to expect anybody's Segue Magic Saturdays to be responses to it, but if you would like to keep this ball rolling, you can still just use the Segue Magic hashtag or tweet at me or something and we'll find it. Probably we can still add it to this playlist. In the meantime, I'm excited to go check out that hashtag and watch videos from all of you who know how to follow instructions and answer a really simple fucking question.